Welcome into the Sports Buffoons podcast.
Welcome on into this wonderful Monday night, people. How are you guys feeling after that Pittsburgh loss to no other than Alex Smith, comeback player of the year, and possibly, just possibly, the NFC East division winner as well. Man, how about that going on? I knew it was going to be a close game. I knew Alex Smith could do something, but I didn't think he'd beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were, as many said, invincible. Look, they weren't that great to begin with. They played some shitty teams, and it really showed. Now they have a tough time. So now it becomes the question with that loss. So Pittsburgh still has the upper hand with that loss over the Chiefs for the number one seed due to their division record being better. Whatever, that's fine. But who has more pressure on them right now, the Chiefs or the Pittsburgh Steelers? Let me break it down for you, because it is the Steelers. They have a lot to prove still, even though they were undefeated. They have a lot to prove. So their next 4 games coming up here, right? So they got Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. That's going to be a tough game because Buffalo's still trying to win their division as well versus the Dolphins. So that's going to be a close game by itself. Cincinnati, whatever. Without Joe Barry, they're nothing. Indianapolis, that could be a huge game for them. That could be a loss as well. Because Indy right now is playing against, or trying to compete against the Titans for that division. So there's another division. I mean, everybody's going to be bringing their A game. And then they finally had to play Cleveland, who could decide the division by the time that comes around. Because with the Buffalo loss and the Indy loss, that Cleveland game could literally come down to who wins the division if they lose those Buffalo and Indianapolis games. So I don't know. I don't like Pittsburgh chances. And let's take a look here at KC. I mean, our schedule isn't, easy peasy either. We do got the Dolphins, who's fighting for the division, like I said. We got the Saints, who clinched a playoff spot and could win the division here in the next couple weeks. So that's going to be a good game. And I think Drew Brees is scheduled to come back against the Chiefs on 12/20. So we'll have to see how that goes. Then we also got the Falcons, who offense is lights out, right? So Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, those guys are just going to blow up. I think, unfortunately, if we don't give pressure on that offense, they're going to blow up. And that could be a tough game. And the Chargers always play us hard for whatever reason. You can't underestimate the Chargers. And we finish out with them. So that's going to be it's going to be a tough finish. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. I still think there's more pressure on the Steelers, just the fact that they have so much more to prove than the Chiefs. The Chiefs have big wins against the Raiders, the Panthers, the Bucks. We beat the Bills. We beat the Ravens, right? So it's just a lot more pressure going on for the Steelers. Now, let's flip to the other side of that game, right? The Washington football team with that win. Where does that put them? Well, that ties them because the Giants beat the Seahawks for whatever reason, because the Seahawks are a fake team, but we'll talk about that on Wednesday's podcast with the boys. But, look at it here, right? Who can come out of that division? Because neither one of those guys are getting a wild card. So that's going to be, that's going to be a really tough one to see. I'm going to click on here and we're going to visit out their schedules as well. So we'll start with the Giants real quick. So they got coming up here, they got the Cardinals, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Cowboys. That doesn't look too hot of a finishing schedule for the New York Giants, who are pretty busted up as it is. So that could be a tough one. The Cardinals have kind of flopped lately, kicking themselves out of a wild card right now. Still have time to play for it, but they got to step it up. The Browns, hand it off, baby. Hand it off, and then give Baker Mayfield a little bit more time. Ravens, we don't know what they are anymore. And the Cowboys are the Cowboys, so that could be a tough one. As far as Washington's finishing schedule, The 49ers, that's easy W. Seahawks, at this point, seems like an easy W. The Panthers will be a tough game, and they finish off against the Eagles, who cares about the Eagles, right? So Washington looks like the better half, who has the better ending schedule, with Alex Smith playing the way he does, Antonio Gibson running the crap out of the ball. Guys, we're looking at possibly, as I said before, as long as Alex Smith is starting quarterback, a Washington division winner. So Washington could be in that playoff race easy, and the way Alex Smith is playing too, and that defense is looking hella good. They could be a potential problem in the playoffs, as much as we made fun of the NFC East, but that was before Alex Smith took over. Just remember that. So that's going to be quite an interesting finish, but we'll have more NFL talk come Wednesday, guys. I'm not gonna bore you with my insights here, but just something to think about as we continue on with that stuff. So will be quite interesting. So, but hey, I really want to get on here because the guys don't like talking about anything college related. Mike maybe football, but I mean they're not big basketball guys. So let's touch football. I want to touch Ncaa football real quick because it's starting to get interesting, guys. Interesting with all the COVID going on. There's the potential that Ohio State could not be eligible for the Big Ten title because may not play enough games if Michigan can't go. Like, Ohio State has to find another game, a backup game, to be able to play in this so they can get in the championship game. I don't know if Big Ten will allow it, but they have to try something, right? This could be, I don't know. They have to change the rules. They have to do something because Ohio State's 5-0. Granted, other teams are 3 or 4 games ahead of them. But by watching the tape, Ohio State is not a bad team. They're probably easily number 3, number 2, right in that range. They beat Indiana, who is a hell of a team, and they're having a hell of a year. I think they're still in the mix, but they need a lot of luck here coming up. So Ohio State, hopefully they get that Michigan game in and then the Big Ten title game because they're going to need every single game to be able to make the playoffs. And not having one of those games, not having a Big Ten title game for Ohio State could hurt them really bad, I think. And it sucks because they should be in the playoffs, plain simple. We all know this. It's Ohio State, first off. Ohio State destroys people like they have been. Looking down the list as well as the rankings. So right now they got the AP top 25 is Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Clemson to round out the top 4. Then they have A&M, Florida, and Cincy and Indiana round up the next 4. Kind of interested in this A&M Florida matchup, SEC, but Cincinnati's 8-0. But let's be real, who are they playing? I don't know. We're gonna find out. So let's go over everybody's schedule first, right? Let's kind of gauge of the potential of these guys actually winning, getting a chance to get in the playoffs, right? So let's start with Indiana, right? Number 8, who has the next best chance going in. Their final game is against Purdue. Great. All they have to do is win out. They have to beat Purdue, and I think they have to beat Purdue soundly. They have to influence the ranking voters, right? So they have to get that done, but they have to beat them soundly. Like, I'm talking like a 30-point beatdown. And that's what Indiana has to do in this game to just prove that they're willing to be in that playoff. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Their only losses against Ohio State, as we know, should be a key in right there. Let's go with Cincinnati, guys. Number 7, 8-0. First in the American, of course. Their only postponed game was against Tulsa. Teams they've beaten, SMU, they beat, Army they beat, who are both in the top 25, not big teams. But they had a Temple game get canceled as well. And then Tulsa in the American League title game is coming up here, and they're number 24. That's for postment, not title game. I apologize. So that's coming up here as well. Cincinnati needs to win that game, but I think they still need a lot of help because even though they're 8-0, I don't think they're that great, to be honest with you. They're not better than the top 5 teams, top 6 teams. So they need a lot of help. They need a lot of losses, but I still even think if one of those top 4 even lose, Cincinnati's still not going to be in. So, but we'll have to see how that goes. See how everybody kind of influences going from there. Next, we got Florida, guys. Florida, number 6. They lost to the Texas A&M, who's at number 5. They had a good win against Georgia, so that helped them out. They also had a great win against Kentucky and Tennessee. They beat down, which is what they needed. So they actually have the LSU game coming up, and then they have Alabama after that. The LSU game, we're not too worried, right? LSU, we all know, is horrible this year. But the Alabama game is something to circle. That's something to circle because that could decide. That could be, as past years have been, like with Georgia and Auburn. That could be Alabama. That could be the winner gets into the playoffs. Plain simple. Winner gets into the playoffs. But we have to watch that. We have to watch this weekend. They have to get through LSU first. They can't have a slip-up. They have a slip-up, they're gone, right? It's official. So we'll have to see what happens here as they get through this weekend and get ready for Alabama. So next up here, guys, Texas A&M Aggies. They are number 5. So they had a loss against Alabama, and they lost badly, which I think hurts them really bad. 52-24. They did beat Florida, 41-38 in the year. Outside of that, they beat Auburn. Luckily, they had a postponement against Mississippi. Ole Miss, I guess, sorry. And then Tennessee is their to-be-determined game. That may get canceled, that may not. Tennessee was supposed to be a powerhouse this year, and they are not at all. That's going to be another team. That's going to be another team they have to do a big beat down on to be able to try to make the playoffs. Now, before we go in the top 4, right, and see their schedules, their next few games, where would Texas A&M fit? Where would Florida fit if there was a loss in the top 4? Who would it take? Would it take Alabama losing? Would it take Notre Dame, Ohio State, or Clemson? Ohio State is in a must-win situation throughout here. Clemson is in a must-win situation. I think Notre Dame and Alabama could have one loss and still be in the playoffs, just due to the fact of the way they performed. So Texas A&M is begging for Ohio State either to not compete or to lose against Michigan here. And Clemson, and then the same deal with Clemson. They have to, they need Clemson to lose again. But now that Trevor Lawrence is back, it's probably not looking good. And it wasn't a big win by Notre Dame anyways. So let's hop into the top 4 and see how those would rank out, right? So Clemson, right? Clemson comes in. Technically they're 3, but they're 4 in the AP. Their only losses against Notre Dame, obviously, was Trevor Lawrence. These guys are killers. Boston College had a close game with them, but then they pulled ahead. Other than that, guys, there's nobody else within 14 points of them. Maybe even 21 points. 14 points of them. So they are dominant. So now they got a big game against Notre Dame on the 19th, right? Notre Dame. They beat... So A&M is watching this game really close as they finish their season. But Clemson has to beat Notre Dame in order to stay in the playoffs. And I think they will. As long as Trevor Lawrence can play, as long as everybody seems to be healthy and they can protect themselves against COVID, I think Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson Tigers will be in the playoffs, and they would hurt Notre Dame's chances on where they seeded. I don't think Clemson will play Alabama first, but I think it'll be a rematch again of possibly Notre Dame, Clemson in the playoffs as well. So there could be 3 matches in this. This could be a really exciting time too. So we'll have to watch that game when that comes to play. Ohio State, guys. So like I said, Ohio State has the biggest pressure out there right now. They have Michigan on the 12th, but can they steer clear of COVID, right? Can Harbaugh avoid an 0-6 record against Ohio State? Michigan has nothing on the line. Harbaugh's ready to leave. Let's be real. He's ready to leave. They're ready to let him go. Michigan has nothing on the line. No worries. They're just going to go out there and play ball. Ohio State has everything on the line. They have to still perform to their perfection. Now, they haven't had much trouble, They beat Penn State, which is fine. And then they beat Indiana, of course, which are the two biggest teams. They gave them trouble in this small schedule they have. So we'll see. It's either, I think this game, if Michigan beats Ohio State's out. Indiana could possibly even be in, but I still don't see them jumping Florida or Texas A&M. I just don't see that happening, guys. So that's going to be interesting as well. Then we got Notre Dame, as we talked about, has Clemson, right? But they do have some big wins that could keep them in the top 4 come playoff time, even with a loss to Clemson. So they beat UNC, and they beat Clemson, and they also beat an early Florida State team that was kind of rising. So that's going to be, again, only time will tell, but I could see Notre Dame still losing that game and still being number 3 or 4 seed, going to the playoff time. And then finally, the Alabama Crimson Tide. So they have big wins against A&M, Georgia, right, our SEC teams, Auburn, and then they have Arkansas this weekend, and then they play Florida. So all they have to do is win out. They just have to keep playing their ball and win out. So it's not going to, I don't know. I'm not seeing much of an issue for Alabama. I think even with the loss to Florida, they still stay in the top 4. So I think Florida and Texas A&M are begging for a loss to Clemson and Ohio State. Now, what are my personal opinions, right? How am I seeing? Like, I'm not following, so I haven't followed college football like I do in the past. I'm not, I don't know big names like head stat wise, whatever. But from an outside perspective, I listen to the radio shows. I see all the highlights, the catch up on the weekends because I do work during the weekend. I think it's gonna stay as is. I don't see much of a change. I could see Clemson, Notre Dame switching, so it'd be Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame as the 1 through 4 seed. I don't see A&M getting in. I see Florida getting in over A&M with the Alabama win or with the Alabama loss. But that also has to expect a Notre Dame possibly loss could do that. I doubt it. I just don't see that happening. I don't see how Alabama Notre Dame drop out of the top 4 versus a loss on a ranked team. I just don't see it. So I don't know. It's gonna be kind of interesting. Obviously, BYU was big talk as well, and there was nothing going on there after they lost this week. So BYU's gone. So we'll see. I don't really believe anything on Cincinnati, Indiana's front, but it's the best time of the year, guys. Right? It's the best time of the year. We got all this starting to shape up for NCAA football. NFL's going on, starting to shape up their playoff picture. Seeds are starting to take effect, and of course, the NCAA basketball season is just starting as well. It's a great time of year. That's all I can say. So we'll keep in touch. I'll probably follow back up here in a couple of weeks here once we kind of get an idea of who actually does make it and what the games come out to be title games as well. And we'll try to give a preview of a couple of games. Maybe I can get some of the guys involved. So, but hey, let's jump into the basketball portion of things, right? How about a crazy week this week? This past week was. Gonzaga is only 3-0. They had a few games postponed. Let's see here real quick. So Gonzaga had to shut down after positive tests, and they had to cancel 4 games. That's 4 games gone off their schedule. What does that mean? What does that mean right now? So they got Baylor that's postponed. That's number 2, Baylor postponed. Then they lost 4 games after that, which canceled, but they weren't really big games at all. There's no big names, nobody to really worry about. And then on the 19th, they have Iowa, number 3 Iowa. So are we possibly going to see a chance here in this Baylor-Iowa game? Baylor could be coming up before Iowa. They could go 2-3, 1, 2, and 3, all playing right after each other. That could happen, guys, and that could be huge for Gonzaga come even tournament time. If they lose one of these games, that could be huge. So, I don't know. we'll see how they deal with COVID and how to prepare during this time. Obviously, they got a little bit of time to prep for it for Iowa and maybe even Baylor. Baylor's still postponed, so they might do that. But yeah, that's kind of interesting though that Gonzaga is still number one in the AP poll, AP Top 25 in coaches poll, despite the postponements and the cancellations. So then we got Baylor guys at number 2, Iowa at 3, Michigan State 4, and KU, my boys, KU at 5. Round out the top 10 real quick: Illinois, Houston, Creighton, Villanova, and Duke. Some notable worthies that happened after this week. Texas dropped down to tie to 14 at 4-1 after the loss to Villanova. North Carolina's at 3-1. Who else we got? Ohio State's 3-0. They're coming up. San Diego State, who I called out first week against UCLA, they're 4-0, guys. Watch out for them to keep pushing up. Who dropped out of the top 25? How about Kentucky, guys? Kentucky. So technically, at the time, KU, the loss to KU, their second loss in a row, right? That was a bad loss. That was a bad loss for Kentucky, technically. And then they go out and they lose again. They lost again. That's 3 in a row, guys. 3 in a row. Kicks them out of the top 25. That's not a good start for Kentucky. That is not the start they wanted as a young team like that. Now, am I worried about them? We'll see. They drop 4 or 5 in a row. Then yeah, that's a number 1 seed for the NIT, baby. Number 1 seed. So they're, I don't know. It's kind of interesting on that. So let's, I don't know. I just laugh, right? So my neighbor is a big Kentucky fan, and I'm a KU fan. I was at work KU Kentucky night watching on my phone, and I get the picture of when Kentucky was up, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. You know, Kentucky's supposed to win. I'm not too worried about it. It's a KU fan. You know, we're going to be a slow start. And then towards the end, you know, KU's starting to come back, and they're leading all of a sudden, and then they win. And so I sent back, and I just go, LOL, 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 right? All, like 3 pages long. And she had no idea they won until I sent a screenshot. And boy, am I not letting her live that down. So, hallelujah, KU. So, let's, real quick, guys, let's kind of go over what to expect the next upcoming week here. Obviously, probably nothing coming from Gonzaga's side, as maybe Baylor will get in somewhere in the cancellations range, but we'll see how that COVID situation happens at Gonzaga. Surprising actually, Illinois is playing damn good ball. Their only loss is against Baylor. So Baylor is actually playing legit, unlike what I thought. But they have Duke on the 8th, on Tuesday. So when this comes out, it'll be Tuesday. So that's going to be a great game to watch, guys. Watch for that game, as Duke and Illinois. I mean, who's gonna be the first 2-loss team there? I don't know. I'm thinking the way Duke's playing, I like Duke in this game, but I can see Illinois pulling it off. But I will go Duke in this one. That's going to be a hell of a game to watch, though. And I am off, so I will be tuning in on that. Who we got? Next up, Villanova, guys. Villanova did lose to VT, Virginia Tech, last week here. They did bounce back with a Texas W recently, but they got Georgetown coming up, and then on the 14th, they got DePaul. They don't have any really tough games until they hit Virginia. Butler and Virginia, actually 16th and 19th, so that's going to be interesting coming up, but we'll talk more coming up there. But they're playing like a hell of a team they are. Duke Blue Devils, like we talked about, they had Illinois on the 8th. They had a postponement against, I believe today, or the other day, against Elon. And then they got Notre Dame, who's actually not playing too bad at all, coming up as well this weekend. So, next Wednesday. So that'll be kind of good. But I'm happy to see still some big names in the top 10, like Duke. And KU, who we got coming up, right? So, by the way, for those that don't know, North Dakota State University is actually a damn good team, and I circled that one as a loss on my schedule here. I figured we would lose to that team just as young as our team is. That's not a bad team that we're going to beat. That's a good team that can beat us, and they almost did it, 65-61. Now we got Creighton, which is going to be another great test to what I'm excited for on Tuesday. Watch for that game, because that could be, I don't know if I like that one, but I'm hoping KU continues to what they pulled out of Kentucky and just continues to just play their ball, play smart, and play fast and play small. So I like the way KU's looking. And then we got Omaha, and then we start Big 12 play, guys, come the 17th. We're almost Big 12 time already. I'm excited for that stuff. I don't know about you guys. We got Texas Tech coming in Big 12 play in West Virginia and Texas. It's our first 3 Big 12 games. But more on that later, because that's going to be fun. I don't know if we'll win all 3, but that's going to be fun. Can the Jayhawks pull it out? Can the Jayhawks even win this division? I think they can, the way they're playing. At number 5, watch them to continue to soar. So that's going to be really fun. But, I mean, no other huge games I saw right now. It's going to be just really interesting to see how things start working out in the next 3, 4, or 5 weeks through conference play. Who's going to really go in and out? Are we going to see a lot of changes up in the top 3 with Iowa, Baylor, Gonzaga? We might. We'll probably see mainly more changes in the 4 and 5 section. Yes, that involves KU, but I'll accept that now. What can I say? So, but yeah, outside of that, guys, I don't really have anything else to talk about. I will be in the podcast for the Buffoons podcast on Wednesday. We will also have a special guest coming in to talk a little bit of baseball, and he'll stick around, and we'll have a little our usual podcast as well. So kind of tune into both of those things this week. As always, follow us on Twitter, guys. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook. We actually have our own website out. You can find that on Facebook as well, and that has all of our podcasts in the central location. If, of course, anything else you guys need, please give us a tweet. We're more than willing to come up with, if you have different topics you want to hear about from us or any suggestions, we're always willing. We're open ears and willing to hear it. All right, guys. Well, I'm out for the night, and we'll see you Wednesday. Thanks all.